Hello, pipe smokers of Ireland. This is a Pipepastor coming to you from Pismo Beach in California. And let me just see if I can give you a little shot of what that looks like. There it is. Famous pier, ocean. Those of you that have heard me before, you know that the ocean is my favorite place to be, being on the coast. And doggone it, I thought I had this lung thing beat, and had a real bad episode yesterday or Saturday, and actually affected my heart. So we'll have to look into that on the way back home and see what's going on there. But in any case, can't really smoke today. Alas, I just love to smoke at the coast. Perhaps while we're here this week, if I break down and smoke my pipe, I probably will. I'll take a couple pictures and send it your way, just so that we can make up for this delinquency in this video. But I do have my pipe. It's a nice Canadian Rossi, very nice black bent rusticated, real nice pipe. And I'll just hold it in my mouth and pretend like I'm smoking. Let's see, what would I be smoking in this bowl? Probably black gold. But good to be with you, and glad to see that everybody's been paying their due respects in the way that they want to for Shane Burke and his family. And do appreciate the emails that you guys sent me, the personal messages that you sent me. Apparently, I didn't think it did much good, but apparently I helped quite a few people on our site when it comes to matters of grief and how to help other people grieve. And I was just touching the tip of the iceberg, basically dealing with long distance friends that are grieving. But glad to be of help, and I'm glad to give you some more help as we talked. And basically those principles apply to any form of loss, whether it's having something valuable stolen, whether it's your house being broken, anything that makes a person feel a piece of their soul has been taken away. I know you've heard me talk about this ad nauseum, but I just wanted to give a plug for our man camps for any of you that are able to get out here. The date for the adult men will be July the 30th, noon on Thursday, July the 30th, to noon on Saturday, August, I believe it will be the 1st. So it's a 3-day, 2-night camp. And here's the purpose. You hear a lot of things about outreaches to men, in which they go into the wilderness and they take off their shirts and paint themselves up and beat their chests and so forth and so on. Sort of like at times a He-Man woman hater club, like our gang in way back when. But I often say to women that my ministry to men is basically for women to men, because hopefully the product will be a better man who knows how to love and care for his woman in a better way, who understands any issues he may have with women in general and authority, and how to begin a journey of getting ahead of those issues. Camps, they can't really bring total transformation. And I use the word transformative because a camp can be transformative, but it's catalytic, and that means that we ignite something. If whether it's a 3-day, whether it's a one night, whether it's a whole week conference, the only thing we can hope to accomplish is something that's catalytic. That means something that starts a momentum in an individual toward more personal responsibility and consistent exercise of those disciplines necessary to overcome some of the deficits we may have because of events in our lives. And men have for a long time been caricatured as hard and unfeeling, and some of that's true, some of that is a cultural expectation that we're then squeezed into. Some of it is plain hardwiring. It's the nature of a masculine mystique or soul, that we are hardwired with certain hormones that make us aggressive and competitive, that make us focused and narrow-minded and bent on fixing things and doing things, and not so good at showing empathy or just listening and showing care that way. We're built more toward outside the house rather than inside the house, so that a man can't ever be fully content with just being married, having children, and having a wonderful home. There's always that longing in his soul for something outside of his house to conquer, to complete, to build, etc. Because men are built, and culture will reinforce this, to be only as good as the next fastball. And once we stop pushing forward, once we stop getting up in the morning with something to do, we usually die real quick. I mean, that's what retirement shows us anyway, that men that retire, they're dead within 2-3 years afterward in a lot of cases. I think it was Ian Rand it was a German philosopher once said, when you take the cause out of a man, you take the reason for the man. Now, there's always going to be women and men who do not fit the stereotypical, or even, if I might say this, normative range of behavior and chemistry associated with men. And it's safe to say that norm is 80% of the population. 80% of the men can relate to some range of behaviors I'm talking about. For instance, when it comes to testosterone, there's some men that are very high, and therefore when you have a high T individual, he's pretty unruly as a boy, gets in lots of fights, always active, always need to do something, always competitive, roughhousing, that kind of thing, not really touchy-feely. And we call that the steel qualities of a man. They're high on the steel qualities that are stereotyped into almost a cartoonish image in our media and in our culture. There's also individuals that are born with low T, and they are more in touch with the arts. They're more sensitive. They are more amenable to role play, even playing with dolls and that kind of thing. They're very sensitive. They're almost effeminate. They're not. They're just low T, and that means they're not as driven toward the steel qualities that men are normally driven toward, but toward the velvet qualities of compassion and empathy and kindness and sensitivity and that kind of thing. And you know, what we share at our camp is the ideal man is the perfect balance of velvet and steel. No man is born that way, so usually what needs to happen is the steel guys at the camp need to learn how to be more velvety, and the velvety guys at the camp need to learn how to be more steely. In our man camp for boys, that's why we teach them how to fight. That's why we have a lot of competition and a lot of roughhousing, a lot of manly get a bloody nose and get up and still fight. For the more velvety boys, and there's a lot of them that come up and believe that because their nature calls them toward the softer things of life, they don't qualify for the tougher things of life. And at the end of the camp, it comes to show that some of those kids that are more velvety are just as tough as anybody else. And they need to know that. They need to know that they can be tough, and they can be hard and rough, and that it's good for them to engage in karate and boxing and other things to call that out of them that isn't naturally there. And then the more steely boys at our camps are taught how winning isn't everything, taking care of your team is everything. And that if it's going to cost you a win, they reach back and help your wounded warrior make it across. That's a win. And also when they fight younger boys or weaker boys, we tell the stronger boys, don't hand it to them. Don't give it to them. But also don't beat them to a pulp. Make them win it, or at least make them lose gloriously. And each one of those gets applauded. As a pastor, what I've seen is an abuse of the feminine or feminism in the church, so that Jesus has been made to be all velvet and no steel. And as a result, more women than men get involved in church. And when a man gets involved in church, the church tries to make him all velvety like Jesus. Rather than calling the man to follow someone he can respect for being both. Jesus was a perfect example of that. My favorite personal hero is to me the perfect blend, and he's, it was a role, but he was pretty much this way in real life. And some of you guys in Ireland probably never heard of him. Maybe you have. But it's the old cowboy Clint Walker. Clint Walker was famous for his television series Cheyenne, for The Dirty Dozen, where he played Posey, the big guy, The Night of the Grizzly. He was huge. He was 6'6", he's about 230, 240. Just a perfect build. He wasn't real defined, wasn't bulging muscles, but he was a huge, bulky man, slim-waisted, and could just out-wrestle a grizzly bear, but was always real tender and gentle and respectful to women and to the weaker people, and just exhibited that kindness, that the word from the 14th century is sprezzatura. And sprezzatura was a man who every day practiced to be able to take care of business if he had to. That means that he was trained in the martial arts. He kept himself fit. He always tested his mettle, but lived his life with all that hidden. Sort of like maybe James Bond would be a worldly example of that, where he was a gentleman, and a gentleman comes from sprezzatura. A gentleman wasn't a man that was just gentle. It was a man who was a warrior, but who knew how to behave himself outside the battlefield in a way that was gentle. And so sprezzatura talked about concealing your expertise, concealing your intellect, your knowledge, your strength, and so forth and so on, and cloaking it in humility, letting somebody else win, letting somebody else be the champion, and in fact working toward making them the champion. So our camps labor at selling that idea of the velvet and the steel man, the ideal man, who is made up, we use the word ideal as an acrostic, and I stands for initiative. An ideal man is shows initiative. If he's working for a boss and his boss tells him something to do, he's going to do that with all his might and more if he has to. He's going to work as if his boss's business is his own. He shows initiative. You don't have to get him up in order he's up. You don't have to tell him to practice, he practices. And then the D in ideal is for discipline. An ideal man is disciplined. He disciplines himself. When everybody else is asleep, he's up doing things. When it comes to something he really, really wants to do but shouldn't do, he's disciplined not to do it. He's disciplined to live life for long-range goals, not short-term gratification. Then the E in ideal is for empathy. He's an encourager. He's empathetic. Empathy, again, if you remember last week, making room in your heart for someone else's pain. Men show empathy a lot different than women. Women in a soccer game want to stop the game if their kid gets kicked in the shins. Their prime orientation is caring for that individual, so they're focused in on that little boy that's hurt. Men are focused on the mission. They're performance oriented. And so a kid gets kicked in the shins in soccer, a man will show empathy by saying, "Get up, Johnny, you can do it, you can make it." And then afterward, see if he's okay. Men have to learn how to show a little bit more of the feminine characteristic of empathy, and that we listen and that we care for, and that the person knows we care for them. The A in ideal is for achievement, and an ideal man is an achiever. He never stops trying to achieve. And L is for leadership. An ideal man assumes personal responsibility to take the role of a leader if he has to. He may not be a natural leader, but he'll lead if he needs to, and he certainly is the leader of his family. The thing I wanted to tell you, though, that's primary in our camps is the word initiation. I know a lot of friends, and probably a lot of Irish as well, who never had manhood conferred upon them. Nobody ever talked about it. Hard life demanded they man up, and they did. But in a perfect world, and in a right world, fathers conferred manhood on their sons, or a tribal elder or tribal elders would confer manhood on a young man through initiation. And that usually happened at around the age of 12 or 13, or a little bit older. And at that age, there were certain rites and passages, and in most primitive cultures in the world, they still are, where through a series of tests and so forth, a boy qualified to transition or cross over from being referred to as a boy to being referred to as a man and joining the manhood culture. And that was initiated, started by the father. It was the father's primary role to both model true manhood and raise his son up in a philosophy of true manhood that understood one's responsibilities to one's family, to one's wife, and to living a moral life, and a life that's industrial and hardworking. And that just doesn't happen anymore. So that in more developed countries where there's more leisure time, you've got young men that are raised in homes where all they do is play video games. And that's the bane of my world. I hate video games more than anything else, because they are so seductive and they're so addictive and they waste so much time. But in any case, in America, there are a lot of young men, souls in old men's bodies, meaning that we've got 40, 50-year-old men with a maturity level of 14, 15-year-olds or younger. And they just have never been called out. And so our man camp calls out the man in the man. You know, it's been said that it's easier to raise a boy to be a man than to heal the wound that's in a man. And that's true. Our camp is a healing camp where we call the man out of the man and lead the man to address, perhaps for the first time, certain hurts and wounds that were inflicted on him by primary people in his life that could stunt his growth into manhood. With the first one being a father. A father hurts his kid three ways. And all three feel the same. Either by abandonment, he was just a sperm donor and took off, or by being there but being invisible. He was emotionally aloof, detached, unavailable, which hurts even worse because the kid's confused. Dad's here, but Dad isn't here. And then third, by just outright abusive behavior. But the main wound in a boy's life is a father who's absent, either physically or emotionally. My stepdad was abusive, could be abusive, and he certainly was abusive to me. He left marks on my body I had to lie about. He disciplined me in anger, and wasn't any big deal for him to punch me in the mouth when I was a little kid. But I could see through that as we got older that my stepfather was doing the best he could with what he had. And in the end, he was sorry for that, and we've got a good relationship now. And, a lot of those wounds have been healed because I get it. I understand. He wasn't trying to be malicious. He just was frustrated having to inherit a family of a young man that's not his dad, not his own son. He adopted me. And, doing the best he could. So his physical abuse was no big deal. It could be reconciled, and we could get over that. But a boy doesn't quite get over a father who is not there emotionally, verbally, what have you, or that's just flat abandoned him, because there's nobody there to ever call the young man out of him. There's three things a father can do that covers a multitude of sins. Doesn't matter how much he blows it. I blew it a lot. And the first is that he is constantly showing physical affection to his kids. My sons still come up to me and kiss me, hug me. They don't care if they're in public or not. They're unembarrassed about the physical affection that we have for one another. And I gave that to them all through their life. I was on them all the time. I bathed them, I held them, they smelled me, we wrestled all the time. I wanted them to feel my strength. I wanted them to know, you shake your antlers at me, I'm going to kick some butt, but go ahead, let's try it. And a couple of times I was on the losing end of that when both of those guys, Big Nick and my son Ben, got hold of me. They were just very strong. And you see Bolo Donahue, he's every bit of 6'4", 300 pounds. And then Ben, my younger son, 180 pounds, about 5'11". But oh my gosh, he punches hard. Ooh, punches are hard, strong. So physical affection, man. You got to touch your kids. You got to get. If you've got issues about closeness and you got issues about physical affection, brother, get over them somehow. Because your boy needs it. Needs to feel it. And if your son is stronger than you, get stronger than him. Don't ever let him beat you. Then physical affection, and then verbal affirmation. Your son needs to get input. I hate it when I hear parents label their kids. You know, my dad's favorite expression for me was shit for brains. Here comes shit for brains. And I was a dumb jock. I had some dyslexic problems with math, lousy at math. I kind of wore that label and never really tried to apply myself in school. I felt like I was a big dummy. I lied about my classes and all of that. It's hard to feel good about yourself when your dad's nickname for you is shit for brains. And I hear parents all the time say, oh, this one's real brilliant, this one's my emotionally challenged or whatever thing. And you just don't label your kids. Don't ever set a ceiling over them of what they can or cannot accomplish. But I constantly grab my kids. They'd start walking by just as pleased. I grab them, pull them next to me and say, you are the best thing that ever happened to me. You're my favorite kid. And then the other kid would say, but Dad, you said I was your favorite. You are my favorite, but you're my favorite because of this, but he's my favorite because of this. And they all get a sense and a taste of something unique about them that's great. And constantly, verbally, using your mouth and your tongue, especially at the dinner table, to speak into your kid deep thoughts about how much you love them and how much your life was blessed because of them. I mean, that my kids gave me the gift of fatherhood. I wanted to be a dad. I loved being a dad. I love and I miss being a dad to small young children running around all the time. When we come to the coast, it's very nostalgic because my kids used to run around that beach all the time out there, and then we go swimming. And so physical affection, verbal affirmation. That's the two most necessary things you need to give your kids. The three things a kid needs to hear a father say. A boy needs to hear his father say, I love you. Not once, not twice, all the time. I love you. My dad could not do it. My stepfather could not do it. So when I was older, we were on the phone and I said, Dad, I love you. He goes, I know. I said, Dad, do you love me? You know I love you. Can you tell me? You know, I need to hear it, Dad. I need to hear you say it. There's something about me, but I need to hear you tell me you love me. I love you, son. And from that time on, there was a great healing in our relationship. And now every time on the phone, I talk to my father. Hey, Dad, you know I love you. I appreciate you giving me your name, all this. And he gets all choked up. He goes, I love you too, son. It's important. It does something to my soul. It just is. You can't argue it. Yeah, you know, some kids should know that. Father busts his butt all his life. Everybody should know he loves them. But there's something about your words and speaking into your children. I love you. The best thing ever happened. They need to hear it. The second thing they need to hear from you is, I am proud of you, son. I'm proud of the man you are. And if your son hasn't made you proud of him, find something. Find something to cheer him on to, because men and boys, they go where the cheers are. They hear a cheer, man, they will fight to earn the next cheer, and the next cheer, and the next cheer. They did a study where a man was holding 2 gallons of milk on either hand, stretched out. A man in back of them chewing them out all the time. Then timed how long he could hold those jugs. Then they repeated the experiment with someone that the boy respected, telling him all these things about him that edified his heart, spoke in him, beat the old record by almost 2 minutes. There's just something powerful. You can't deny it. You can't run from it. There's something undeniable about the words of a father. I think Time Magazine years ago did something that said, Father is destiny. That's the truth. And then the third thing is, a boy needs to hear his dad tell him he's good at something. Good at something. So our manhood camp is a camp of initiation in which we initiate men and boys into manhood and confer manhood on them. They all have initiation hunger. Every boy, every man has initiation hunger to be able to at least have someone recognize them as a man. And at the end of our camp, we have this long gauntlet. You can see it on the videos I post on my Facebook page. This gauntlet of blessing, where men walk through this gauntlet, and tribal elders that have gone through this before lay their hands on them and say, today you officially become a man. That's what our camp's about. And I hope some of you guys from out of state try to come. Love to have you, and we will do everything we can to accommodate you and make it as affordable as we can. So that's what I'm about now, working toward our manhood camp. And I'm trying to recuperate and get myself healthy here at the coast. For those of you that are praying people, please pray for me. It's getting a little serious when it's involving the ticker, and I'm a little concerned about that. So in any case, you guys carry on. All you guys and gals, enjoy the tobacco and the pipes and all of that you guys have, and pray I get a day where I can as well. Sláinte.